Thank you for joining again for another episode of The People's Voice, where we can express our opinions and our views with honesty, integrity, and to get the truth out. So I have two guests with me today. I have Gary Rabine, who is running for governor, and I also have David Shistoskas, who's running for attorney general. And we're going to get to know them. We're going to get to know their views, their thoughts, how they're going to change Illinois, and how we can improve to make Illinois better. Because together we can rise up for change, for faith, family, and freedom, because that's what's important. So Gary, how are you today? Excellent. I just want people to kind of get to know you a little bit. So I know, what is your position on, we're just going to get right into the topics, on pro-life?
So pro-life, I mean, I'm a huge, unapologetic champion of life. I've been a strong Catholic Christian for most of my life, mentored by my wife, and we've done a lot to support and adoption, as well as, we bought, often bought, technology and machines to make sure that we can help people as far as life centers and things like that. So, we're huge proponents, of course, of life.
Excellent. And you mentioned that you did adopt one of your children, which is fantastic. And I think that being pro-life, as I am pro-life and David is pro-life also, we need to have steps of how we can help these people who are put into a position where, whether circumstances, a mistake, however it happened, where we can support them to have this child. What are your ideas to help make adoption more affordable, or to continue our steps, since we are pro-life candidates?
Yeah, so first, one thing that we found, and we learned that when we buy ultrasound machines, we invest in ultrasound machines. Over 80% of young girls that actually can see that little baby don't abort. So we've done that in the past. But when it comes to adoption, we've made it really tough in Illinois and across the country. It's much easier to adopt outside our country than inside, which is wrong. We need to make it, much easier, abundantly more easy to adopt, and for young girls to understand that it's an amazing blessing to be able to carry a baby for a family that would love a little baby. So yeah, our fourth child was adopted, and we've got a lot of adoptive family members. My son-in-law's family has 18 adopted children within his family, and many of my friends are adopted, and we help support families in our businesses or elsewhere when it comes to adopting children. I think we just got to all continually think about how do we make that easier and better, because there's an abundance of families that would love to adopt if they could do it.
Yes, I agree. There's this topic of what's going on federally about the abortion, and people say, when is a fetus or a baby a baby? And I have the position that if the end of a heartbeat defines death, then the beginning of a heartbeat should define life. What do you think of that? When does a baby start?
Yeah, I think it's upon conception. You can go to a heartbeat, of course, and definitely, definitively, that's a measurement that we know that there's life there. We just got to quit the craziness in Illinois. We've gone so far to the evil side of this subject. When in Illinois, a young girl doesn't have to notify a parent anymore when she's going to get an abortion. Right? That's sickening. Or we're allowing babies to die next to their mother, after birth abortions, and we've gone so far. We are the most abortion friendly state in America, and it's got to change.
I agree with you. And when the shutdown happened, during one of our rallies that we had, it was a Reopen Illinois rally, we were told that as our businesses were shut down, our governor actually opened up a Planned Parenthood. And to me, that is unmoral. And you mentioned something just a few seconds ago about that there's an evil path. There is right now a path between good and evil. And right now, as you have your conscience and your moral ethics and things like that, you have to stand up for what you think is right. And people are condemning our conservative views for that. What do you think about other situations, and I know that you are very active in giving back to the community and organizing and donating your time. Someone told me that you donate to Gigi's Playhouse. Now, I am a very huge proponent of special needs in Chicago. It originated in Chicago. Can you tell me a little bit about your role that you and your family have done with Gigi's Playhouse and other organizations that you have volunteered with?
Yeah, so my wife had a special needs brother, was born with spina bifida. He was amazing. It's still amazing how close the family is today. My wife passed away a year and 7 months ago, brain cancer, but she had a heart that was amazing. This servant heart that was amazing. I believe it was derived from growing up with a brother that she took care of most of his life, her and her mom. And we adopted our fourth child, Nick, who's an amazing young man today, but he was born with cerebral palsy from fetal alcohol syndrome that he had. We adopted him from Russia, and this son of a gun, he's a pretty normal guy today. My wife traveled across the country to find the best solutions for him. We eventually traveled. Cheryl and I eventually brought him to India, where he had some amazing treatments that really cured a lot of his challenges. But again, I believe a family is drawn so much closer. The love of a family is so much tighter when there's a special needs child or in the family, adult or child. And I'm just very confident of that. So Gigi's is a special organization that we've been supporting over the years, our Rabine Group Foundation. Just even as recently as less than a month ago, we had our foundation golf outing, and Gigi's was the cause of choice that we supported for that golf outing. So either way, we believe that special needs kids are a blessing to any families they're within, draws families closer together, and the love and faith that grows, I think, in these families is tremendous, all because of that one special person that does that. So in Illinois, we've got the least amount of money, or one of the least amount of budgets per capita in the country as far as money we spend in these services, these human services, whether it's whether it's our programs for special needs or handicapped. We're one of the worst in the country today, and we have to change that.
I think that's awesome. Just out of curiosity, in India, did that involve G-therapy or Dr. Oswald?
It didn't. That involved electromagnetic therapy. Okay. Dr. Roberto Trujillo is the neuroscientist behind it, and I'm an entrepreneur. I built a lot of businesses, and I'm actually an investor, a seed investor in that technology to bring it to America right now. We're getting really close, and so it's really the specialty for this technology is for cerebral palsy as well as Parkinson's disease, and we're having amazing results over the last 5-6 years now, and we want to bring it to America, so we're going through all the double-blind tests on that.
And I think this is information that people need to know about you, and this is what separates you from the other candidates, is that you have a different mindset of what's important for the family unit, because everything starts with the family unit, and then it goes on to economy and fiscal responsibility and everything like that. But before, I do want to ask you, I do the polar plunge for Kids Crew in Chicago, so next year, will you jump with our team?
Absolutely. I jumped with a team this year in East Dundee, and it was a blast. We had a lot of fun. I'll do it again.
That was a pool, though. That wasn't the lake.
No, I know, but it was colder than the lake, though. It had more ice than water in that thing.
No, it's a great where I live in the south side of Chicago, we do have a very strong community towards our special needs children and families. So it's awesome that you do that, and it's awesome that you give back, and that you are innovative in what you want to invest your money in, and that is to better our health, better our economy. Can you tell me a little bit about what you have done to mentor kids and young adults with what your organization does?
So for me, a few things have happened, right? With my businesses, in the first 20 years, like many small business owners, I was in my business every day, paving parking lots, concrete and asphalt, and I love doing that. I didn't really step out of it until 20 years later. And that was about 20 years ago now that I started to have a vision for scaling this business nationally. And my goal was to be able to pave parking lots everywhere in America. That goal was attained, and within about 7 years, we were ready and qualified and to be able to pave a parking lot anywhere in America. Today, our Rayvine Group of companies has 13 companies, and very innovative companies. Our goal is to take dirty industries, and I say that nicely because I love my industries, right? But dirty industries and asphalt paving, concrete paving, roofing, and all the things we do, and we like to make them sexy. And the way to do that is we bring technology in our businesses. And our businesses are blessed with some of the most innovative thinkers in the world. And with that, success happens. As we deliver to our customers the most productive, highest quality products, we're blessed with a lot of work everywhere in the country. So that's kind of my business story. But as I traveled the country, I also realized that we had a lot of issues when it came to freedom, when it came to the assault on small businesses across America. And I was a founder of two organizations. One was Turning Point USA with Charlie Kirk, and the other one was called Job Creators Network. And Job Creators Network was to protect small businesses against abusive regulations that were pushing businesses out of our country. And then Turning Point USA, of course, is Charlie Kirk's organization that I was part of founding with Charlie and a few others. That organization, we educate kids across America in college campuses and now high school campuses on why freedom and this amazing free market society that we have should be protected, and we educate on why socialism and communism is so dangerous to our future. And these kids are really doing a great job. We've got about 500,000 kids across the country now in college campuses and high school campuses. And Job Creators Network is an organization now with over 400,000 small businesses. So I'm a person that loves scaling things, taking great ideas and scaling them nationally. And I believe we need that type of mentality in the state of Illinois as a leader, because we don't have enough common sense, business-minded leaders that can't be bought, and that's who I am.
I think that's awesome. It's very exciting to hear. But let's go back and tell us about your lawsuit that you filed, because you are a business owner, and you just mentioned how important freedom is and the ability to make your own decisions. So what did you file with OSHA?
Yeah, so when Joe Biden came out with his mandate against small businesses, that was about October of last year. He came out with the mandate to say that all of us, with people with over 100 employees, must start making sure our employees get vaccinated. And if we didn't do this, we'd get fined. And we did the math. And within a couple of years, all our companies would be out of business because, number one, we believed it was unconstitutional. We believed it was against people's rights, religious rights, and health rights, and medical rights. And so we fought it. We filed a lawsuit in October, soon after the mandate became very clear, and we won in the lower court. We lost at the Sixth Circuit Court, and then we actually won the U.S. Supreme Court on January 14th of this year. That battle was for over 80 million working Americans. So which today and after that point and today they're not forced to take vaccinations, as well as small businesses. And the effect that would have been detrimental to our supply chain as well. So if you think about it, Christine, we fought this thing because we knew it was unconstitutional, and there's no way I would ever want to make my teammates do anything like this. But really, in the end, as bad as our inflation is, because what we're doing to the production today with loss of people in the workforce, right? We're messed up. Our state and our country is messed up, and our inflation is caused by people out of work, not being able to get product, raising the cost of fuel and all these things, right? So our supply chain is totally wrecked. If we didn't win this lawsuit, 10 to 20 million more people would have been out of work in our country. Think about the inflation and the effect that would have had on everybody's pocketbooks.
I agree, and I don't think that people understand the whole perspective of all of that. So thanks for explaining that, and that makes a lot more sense, even to me as I'm listening to you here. You mentioned too, the very first time I met you, I believe was at Grant Park, and we did something to help with the schools to be open and our business to open. That was in January. And I think that was even before you were going to run. And education is important. It's important to me. I'm a substitute teacher, and I am one of those people who have chosen not to take the vaccination. And I just received notice that if I do not get vaccinated, then I'm going to lose my job. And also what they have just signed, that if in a classroom, if a child tests positive, the teacher has to quarantine if they're in a classroom with a child that tests positive. But if you're not vaccinated, you don't get paid. If you're vaccinated, you get paid. So what's happening now is pure discrimination, and I know I can touch on this later with Dave. But what are your thoughts on that? Because the teachers union is not protecting us. How can we protect my fellow peers who work with me who have the same thought process as I do?
Yeah, if we have a tyrant as a governor and a bad attorney general who doesn't hold him accountable, we're going to be a place where we have to stand up, and it's going to cost us income and our livelihoods and everything else. If we have a great governor, a great attorney general who holds all these politicians accountable, these situations won't happen in the future.
And that is important for people to know. So when they are voting, to know that we cannot repeat what has happened the last 2 years. That you are saying 100% you will never sign an executive order to continue this path of closing our businesses, of which where I live, where my district is, over 30% of businesses closed, because that's detrimental. Our kids belong in school. Our businesses belong opened. So can you just reiterate again so people know where you stand? I think they know where you stand, but just to make sure.
Yeah, I've been fighting for freedom for about 12 years now as I've seen what's going on in our country. And I've stuck my neck out many times, as well as this vaccine lawsuit against Biden and OSHA. The federal government has a spotlight on my businesses nowadays, and I knew that was going to happen. So I will fight for freedom in every turn. I won't ever hold back. Again, I'm a person that will never be bought by anybody. And this is the type of people we have to have lead our state and our country, or it's going to fall apart.
Yes. So let's talk about now your plan. What's your most important thing that you're going to do when you first get into Springfield?
So, Christine, I'm a turnaround guy. I've been building small businesses into bigger businesses for 40 years since my graduating high school. And I've got 13 companies today in the Rabine Group of companies. I'm invested in others as well. But overall, I have a passion for building and turning around businesses, and this is what we need. I've studied the economies of other states that have turned around, and I've hired the best leaders you can find that have been part of the turnarounds of those economies. Indiana's turnaround, Tennessee's, Florida's, even California when they turn around property tax. My friends, they're on my team, are part of those big turnarounds. So here, it's really not that difficult. We're treating businesses in Illinois worse than any other state in America. The regulatory environment on small businesses is by far the worst in America now, okay? You can't continue to do that and think that manufacturers and businesses like mine are going to stay here. Of my businesses, 7 out of 13 of our companies should not be here any longer. When we look at the simple accounting, simple math, that will tell you our cost to do business here is too high. We'd be better treated almost anywhere else in the country. So 7 of the 13 companies should not be here. My leaders of those businesses talk to me about this annually. Gary, should we get out of here? When do we get out of here? I'm telling them we're not leaving. This is my home. This is their home because, unfortunately, I'm the majority partner. But if I was the minority partner, I guarantee you, many of these businesses, my CEOs would say, well, we got to get out of here. The majority owners would say, we got to get out of here. I love our state, and I'm going to fight for it, but it can't last forever. So we have to change this atmosphere when it comes to regulatory environment on businesses, small and large. Okay. Secondly, there's two things we have to do. The regulatory environment, number one. Number two, property taxes are now the highest in America here in Illinois. What's happened in other states, smart states that have turned it around, is they say, okay, what does the average state pay in property tax? This is an example of California back in 1979, 1980. they're at 3% of the value. So close to where we're at today, a $200,000 home would pay back then $6,000 in California on average. We're about there right now in Illinois. Even dumbass California, who doesn't reduce anything regulatorily in taxes, reduce their property taxes to 1% of the value. So on a $200,000 house again to $2,000. Their property values have grew double, 100% value growth within like 3 years, and then have continued to grow from there. Wouldn't that be nice if in Illinois our property values? I'm not saying it could happen in 3 years, but I'm confident that our property values would double within 5 years, and our property taxes would stay lower than they are today. So at 1%, your property value of $200,000 could go to $400,000, and you're still paying less than you are today by about 35%. So again, that's what we have to do. When you lower property taxes, good things happen. You have to be competitive. You don't have to be. Doesn't have to be the lowest in the country, like let's say Tennessee and some of these other states, but we have to be competitive, which is at 1%. We do those two things: property tax down to 1% of the value for residential, about 2% for commercial, and then when you go to regulatory environment, we have to reduce our regulations to the average of America. You do that, businesses will flourish here, and property owners, small and large, will love being here again.
I agree with you. I think that the way to improve our economy is to get other commerce in the core of where we are is to have entrepreneurship, to have people to have their own businesses, and to have a government and the legislators who are going to support that and who's going to help grow that, which is just going to bring better values, better schools, like you said, less property taxes. It's going to improve. We're going to get back to our Midwestern values, which we have kind of taken away a little bit. I know that you have an event that's coming up about the sex trafficking, and to me, that is one of my platforms that I think that what's happening with the sexualization of our kids and what's happening in the grooming of our children in school is 1,000% wrong. The path of it is to promote abortion, which is to promote income for those companies. Tell us about this event that you're having so that people can learn about it.
Well, Christina, in my businesses, I always find that the foremost experts in the world in the businesses I want to be great at. And of our businesses, 4 out of 13 have become world-class in their space currently today. And we're going to continue to strive to be great. And of the other 9 companies, all those companies are doing the same thing. They're striving to be world-class. We have these things we call these moonshot visions, where we want to take our businesses somewhere nobody else has ever gone before. And when we get there, we're world-class companies. And when you're world-class, you know what? Your profits are better, your customers are the best, and people want more of what you have. When we look at Illinois, I'm going to find the best minds I can find in the world to solve these problems. And one of my friends who I got to be friends with a few years ago, as I became very passionate about this rotten, evil subject of sexual trafficking, sex trafficking. We've got probably the worst environment in America today in Illinois. With what these son of a guns have done, Bruce Rauner initially to make us a sanctuary state, and then J.B. Pritzker to take it to the next level by eliminating all communication with ICE and federal police and our local police and state police and county police. We've with this non-parental notification, to take away the notification of a young girl that gets pregnant who doesn't have to talk to her parents now. We become the favorite place in America for human traffickers, sex traffickers, as well as drug traffickers. And it's sickening to think that this is purposeful, but it sure the heck seems like it's purposeful. So what we have on the 20th is one of the foremost minds in the world of trafficking. He's been battling it for years. His own sister was trafficked when he was a kid. Watched his single mother travel the country in South Africa to try and find his sister. Found her 4.5 years later, and she barely alive. And so this experience motivated him to be a person that's trying to solve this problem. He's confident that in our country, in America, we've got one of the biggest markets in the world, about 50 or the biggest, about a $50 billion industry. And these creeps, these evil people, are profiting more than ever on it. And in Illinois, we're like one of their favorite places, because as they push these traffickers out of the South states, the best state in the country, the one that's best to the illegal felons, is here, Illinois. So we have to stop this. And this 20th, it's going to be myself and Jaco talking about, exactly what's going on and how we all need to be awakened about it and stand up against it.
And, something came up on my Facebook memories today. About 4 years ago, I participated in a panel, and it was when they had, which actually just happened, the path to make the restrictions on the sex offenders lessened. And I sat in a room because they were all there because they're saying that their life is so much horrible, that they can't get housing, they can't get a job, the restrictions. And I went with my girlfriend Tina, who her daughter was molested by the neighbor. And there was a plea bargain that was officiated, I guess you would say, where he didn't have to register as a sex offender. And I am completely baffled by that, and I'm going to touch base with Dave with that in a second, that what's happening, that there is no accountability. And when I was in that room, I felt nauseous because they're complaining that they have to live within 500 feet of a school. Now they only have to live within 250 feet. And the things that they pushed for 4 years ago, they got. So like you said, this has been a path that has been going on. It's good versus evil. People have to wake up and understand what's really happening in our state. And if I can just switch just to Dave, because Dave is kind of nodding his head, with that, with all of these criminals that are getting out, because there's no accountability, I feel like we're in a Monopoly game. They're going past the go, and they're just getting out of jail free. And we've never seen crime like this, especially in my area, which is a blue collar filled with a lot of our Chicago Police Department and Fire Department. What can you do? And I'm going to get back to you, Gary, in a second. What can you do, since we're talking about the crime, and the Attorney General, once, and I'll get back into why you're doing all of this, but real quickly, as an Attorney General, what can you do to help get these people in get them in jail? There's
a series of actions that can be taken on a variety of subjects, not just sex trafficking, but drug situations, gun running, other kinds of activities. Where historically, when I was in the office, when I was a state's attorney, we had these interjurisdictional agreements between other kinds of between communities, state police, federal officials, where they would work these, what they call metropolitan enforcement groups. To the best of my knowledge, I haven't seen any action by a metropolitan enforcement group. Every once in a while, if you would see that there'd be news conferences and big piles of heroin or big piles of drugs, big piles of guns. Those are the results of these metropolitan enforcement groups, because they allow, strangely enough, for undercover officers to work more effectively because they can work outside their hometown where they're recognized. And then frequently, those kinds of investigations result in criminal charges being pursued through statewide grand juries, because a lot of these things, of course, are statewide. And when you have just the local county prosecutors, they don't necessarily have the resources or the jurisdiction to go statewide on these kinds of circumstances. And I've got experience, we talked about those things. I don't see any of that activity, but not that I'm on the inside of this anymore. I'm a private citizen, but you used to be able to tell that these things were going on when you'd see the press conferences of the major busts. And without those, you can see that those things are not happening. We will reinstitute those things. And strangely enough, while the frontline people executing these kinds of activities are in fact law enforcement officers, it is the prosecutors that are actually the leadership under those circumstances, because they're the ones that have to go to court to get the wiretaps, to get the warrants for wiretaps, to get the search warrants, to get the legal authority, and then advise the law enforcement folks on what kinds of things they need to develop in terms of evidentiary matters to have successful prosecutions. I do not see any of this taking place in the state of Illinois, and on so many levels, not just the sex trafficking, but rather the fentanyl situations, rather huge numbers of illegal guns that are being trafficked. We've got plenty of gun laws. Nobody has to do anything about new gun laws. All they have to do is enforce the gun laws we have. And so there's a tremendous amount. There's just not been the will to enforce the law that we have. Not only not the will to enforce the law we have, but actually to unenforce the law we have, and we'll talk about some of that in detail. But it's on such a huge scale. Everybody, is upset about Jussie Smollett getting turned free. That's just a small thing.
That's just a tip.
It's a small thing. It made good news, and it was popular. But that has nothing to do with folks that are out on bond or out on home monitoring and kill police officers.
Right.
These are tremendous things. And local prosecutors who are not doing their job, the Attorney General can, in fact, do their job across a variety of issues. Among them, the sex trafficking issues that are in place. These are major industries, and they take major investigations and cooperative investigations interjurisdictionally between the federal government and the state governments.
And I think that would entail having a governor that supports the police, as you do, Gary.
Absolutely. I mean, it's such an ignorant thing to think about, to funding police and not supporting our police. Right now, the handcuffs are on our police, and we need to put them back on the criminals. It's disgusting what we've done to our police forces across our state of Illinois, and we've lost thousands of police. We're undermanned by a lot, and we have to bring that back. When I win, we will hire a couple thousand police in a short period of time, but they're going to know that they're going to be in a place where they're looked upon as the heroes they should be looked upon. Not to say that bad police shouldn't be reprimanded and taken care of. They do. Our unions sometimes protect them when they go too far protecting them. A very small percentage, in my opinion, police every day look to do something evil. I'm confident that almost all police are there to do the right thing and to be heroes in our community and look out for our communities. We do need to take the small few and make sure that we're prosecuting them and doing what we have to do to get them out of the police force, something that they're not passionate about. That's what we'll do as administration for our state.
Right, and that's with any position. Any position, there's always people who take who abuse their power of authority, kind of like what the governor did with his his mandates and his extensions of all of that. So another thing that is very, very important to me, and what he touched on, and you just touched on too, David, is the drugs that are in Illinois and the amount of overdose and the amount of fentanyl. I have a girlfriend whose daughter unfortunately passed away from a fentanyl overdose, and she was one of the first to actually prosecute the person who gave it to her. She actually is a Chicago police officer. And I don't know why there was such a resistance to prosecute these people who are basically switching these drugs, and these drugs are killing people. In my area, there are dozens of people who have passed away or been murdered by this fentanyl. David, as you with the Attorney General, or even as you, Gary, what kind of programs can we do? I'm a person who thinks about preventative. What can we do? Let's not be reactive. Let's be proactive. Let's stop it. When I was little, it was, when they had the egg and they burnt it or they cooked it. This is your egg. This is your brain on drugs. I still remember that, and my friends and I kind of chuckle about it. But it was an impactful thing that was taught to us. I have never done a drug. I have no intention to, and we are idolizing people who do wrong things. So even in schools and in education and with this sexualization, this gender identity, everything that is happening, they're trying to minimize and take away what's important in how to keep, the morale aspects equal. So what can you do, Gary, to stop the drugs, or to I think start with our youth, start in schools, instead of pushing this gender identity, push more of healthy choices. What are your thoughts on that? And what kind of programs would you initiate? And then also, I'm going to come back to you, Dave. How can you come back and prosecute these people who were never prosecuted with all of these drugs that were found in their possession? So Gary, you first, please.
So I think Dave and I probably align on a lot of these subjects, but it's holding people accountable. I mean, we got to hold people accountable for the smallest crimes, the biggest crimes. We're saying, if you steal only $1,000, $999 of this stuff, no problem. Just you probably needed it more than that small business store owner needed it, right? I mean, that's got to end. Small crimes have got to be, people got to be held accountable in small crimes just as well as big crimes. If we do that, things change. But when we look at what's coming in from the borders, when we talk about the drug stuff, I've been all over the state of Illinois, and these small counties in southern Illinois and western Illinois along the Mississippi River, these beautiful little towns and counties are being decimated by this drug problem. The sheriffs are telling me that they don't have to bake it in their kitchens anymore. They're not dying as much from the drugs that we have. They have very clean drugs that are coming from China through the border of Mexico. China drugs that the people are living a long time on. That's just ruining their brains and making them zombies. And with Illinois, a state where you get unemployment just by not working, pretty much. Okay, there's no accountability there. People are out of work and they'll never be back to work because they're getting ruined by the drugs coming over the border. So we've got to stop this crazy porous state border we have that allows this trafficking of drugs and human trafficking and drugs across our borders. I mean, this sanctuary state thing was a ridiculous thing that a Republican governor, Rauner, put in place here, and this Pritzker has done everything to make it even worse with the stuff he's doing. So we've got to get back to just common sense, and that'll be part of it.
Yes, I agree. Gary shared a little bit about his history and how he came as being a businessman to start other businesses and how he's using that's going to help him be a great governor. Tell me a little bit about your history and how long have you been a lawyer and what brought you to this position of wanting to run?
Well, to start out with, we actually have some common history in terms of I actually delivered my first case of beer when I was 5 years old. Okay,
oh boy.
My family, we were beer wholesalers. My grandfather had started a distribution company by selling beer out of the trunk of his car. Those are two things that kind of express what's wrong with America right now, because if my grandfather, who started a company out of the trunk of his car by delivering beer to other Lithuanian bar owners because they couldn't speak English, so he spoke English and he was kind of the translator, and then he started delivering the beer out of his trunk of his car and started a company that lasted more than 60 years. Over that 60 years, probably employed close to 1,000 people. If you went up and down the street with beer in the trunk of your car today, you would be in jail. We have become a permission society. If that of course translated, and my dad ultimately was delivering beer to picnics on the weekends. Right? He would take me along on Saturdays and Sundays to deliver the beer to picnics. I would ride in the beer truck, and then we'd roll up the doors, and I'd be taking out 20-pound cases of beer when I was 5 or 6 years old. Today, Dad would probably be arrested for some sort of child abuse, locked up as some sort of abusive father for having his kid work. Having his kid help his work. But both my grandfather and my father taught me the value of work and the value of doing small businesses. And those I learned important lessons in those things. It sounds like a funny story that I delivered my first case of beer at 5 years old, and I learned to drive a beer truck before I learned to drive a car, those kinds of things. But the truth is those things are not allowed in America now. Those things are not allowed in America, and we create the society that Gary's talking about, that people get paid for doing nothing. No work is rewarded, and parents are penalized for, in fact, teaching these kinds of things to their children. This is a problem. But at any rate, more importantly, regarding ultimately, I wound up working in the company, and we did that for a long time, and I wound up going to law school. When I was 33, I went to law school later in life. Became a lawyer at 35. We got the love for the country, although from my other grandmother, Barbara Šestokas. Barbara was a Lithuanian immigrant. She was one of 11 children, 8 of whom were killed by communist invaders in Lithuania. They had a family farm. Two were priests. Another was a nun. Another was a school teacher. So the communists killed the business owners, the religious folks, the educators, anybody that was like that. So anybody that thinks about socialism and communism being wonderful, they're going to be the first to go. They're going to be the folks that are on the firing line to make the transition. So this is what Grandma taught us. She was put on a boat when she was 15 years old, all by her lonesome. There was some extended family in Boston, and she ultimately made her way to Chicago. But she was born in September, and she made us celebrate her birthday on the 4th of July, which was the anniversary of when she became an American citizen. And that's when she considered herself to have truly been born. And that lesson from Grandma is what led me to become an educator on the founding documents of the country. I've written a book about the Constitution, one about the Declaration of Independence. That also led me ultimately to law school to be able to do these things. And when Dad was ready to retire, we wound up selling the company, and I went to practice law and became an assistant state's attorney. I became a prosecutor to enforce the law, and it was my great honor and privilege to be able to get up in the morning and go to court and then say to the judge, "Good morning, Your Honor, David Shestokas on behalf of the people of the state of Illinois." You know, that's a very special job in the law because what lawyers are supposed to do generally, and this is right and proper, they're supposed to zealously advocate for their client. But when you're like an assistant attorney general or an assistant state's attorney or a state's attorney or attorney general, you have a unique position in the law. Your unique position in the law is to justice. It's not to zealously advocate for the government. It's to make sure that justice is done and that the law is followed. When I would say that to the judge, typically there would be a fellow to my right who was charged with a crime and people to my rear that are victims of a crime. But I still always remember that when I would say on behalf of the people, that the guy over there who's charged with the crime, he's one of the people. And so we have a duty to see to it that if you're going to try and take somebody's life, liberty, or property on behalf of the government, you have to make sure that the government follows the law, that they see to it that the due process is followed, see to it that the crimes are proved beyond a reasonable doubt. So it's a great responsibility to do those things.
Now, did you just come about deciding to run for Attorney General, or how did this come about?
No, I did do some work for the president in Pennsylvania during the election in November 2020. We organized monitoring things in Allegheny County, and I ultimately wound up in court with Mayor Giuliani in Williamsport, Pennsylvania. I then testified before the Pennsylvania Senate. I do a whole hour and a half on what happened in Pennsylvania in 2020. That's all separate. That's a separate show. But I did do one of those presentations in Decatur, Illinois in April of 21. And there was a fellow in the audience by the name of State Representative Dan Calkins. And Dan came to talk to me after the presentation, after I did the explanation of what happened in Pennsylvania in 2020. And Dan was explaining to me that in the state legislature, in the previous election, as many as 40 Democrats ran for the state legislature unopposed. There was no Republican opposition. So when they're on their way to their supermajority, there's 40 seats that were just given to them from the get-go. And Dan said he and some other folks were actively recruiting candidates to see to that didn't happen again. And I said, Dan, well, under that circumstance, I'd be happy if after they do the redistricting and you have some openings and it turns out that I'm an appropriate fit for one of those, I said I'd be happy to participate as a candidate for the legislature. And Dan said, Dave, no, that's not right. He said, Dave, why don't you run for Attorney General? And that's how it started. It was suggested to me by Dan Calkins, who I'm going to be doing an event with very, very shortly in Decatur again. And so it set me on a journey to investigate the office in a way that I hadn't looked at it in detail before, and I ultimately discovered some important things about the office that most people don't realize.
Like, what's the role of it?
Yeah, like what's the job? What the job actually is supposed to be, exactly. And strangely enough, I found out that most people have a misapprehension of the job because when they hear the term Attorney General, usually they think of the United States Attorney General. United States Attorney General is appointed by, serves at the pleasure of the President, and even though they pretend that they're going to be impartial, they're the head of the Justice Department too, and all the Attorneys General, they always say, well, we're going to execute the law and be impartial, et cetera, et cetera. But as a practical matter, the President can fire the Attorney General of the United States, and so as a practical matter, if the President and the Attorney General disagree about the law, the Attorney General has two choices. One is to execute the President's policy or to resign. That's it. That's not what the story is for the Illinois Attorney General. The Illinois Attorney General is elected by you, by the people. He's not,
So does the governor have any control or can dictate what you do?
No, although recently you heard that J.B. Pritzker lost the case in court, and he said, I'm going to tell the Attorney General to appeal. He can't tell the Attorney General to do anything. The Attorney General is, in fact, elected by the people, serves at the pleasure of the people, if you will. It's an independently elected office, independently created by the Illinois Constitution. There's something called the Illinois Attorney General Act that outlines 15 particular duties of the office. And strangely enough, the very first duty, it says the first duty is to represent the people of the state of Illinois, not the governor, not the Department of Public Health, not the Board of Education, not the Board of Elections or the alphabet soup of agencies, but the people of the state of Illinois. And that makes all the difference in the world. And that's not how the job has been conducted. And I've been on an education tour as much as a campaign, educating people on what the role of the Attorney General is legally. It's supposed to be actually a check on the governor, not to be the wingman of the governor, not to execute the governor's policy, but actually to do justice.
You know, Gary had mentioned what he has given back to the community and what he has done. And you keep saying, and everyone says, we the people, we're here to serve. We're all running for these positions to help Illinois. So what have you done in your position as a lawyer to help others recently to share your knowledge? What have you done?
Yeah, being a lawyer actually is also a special privilege and an honor, and there's also an oath that goes along with it to, in fact, support and defend the Constitution of both the state of Illinois and the state of Illinois. So you have a particularly special place in the community, as you're an officer of the court, is what they call you. And part and parcel of that is to do what they call pro bono work. Pro bono work is short for pro bono publico, that is for the good of the public. And I, in the recent past, have done some of that kind of work during the pandemic circumstances. Of course, we had situations where among these mandates, and we could get into that discussion, by the way, there is no legal term, and there's no existing legal term in American law for mandate. It doesn't exist. That's something a king does, and that doesn't exist in American law. But besides...
He's not the king?
No, you are. The people are sovereign. And so at any rate, among those things were restrictions on religious activity. Only maybe 10 people could come to church in a gathering and whatnot. And of course, we have something called the First Amendment that gets in the way of the governor issuing these illegal orders to begin with. And on behalf of a church in Grundy County in Morris, Illinois, Standing in the Word Ministries, I did file a suit challenging the restrictions on church activities. Although we took an interesting tack on that. And you mentioned I did it for free. I didn't charge the church a dime. In fact, it felt wrong to have the church have to go and make a collection, not only potentially to pay me, but other aspects of that. And so I actually paid the legal fees for the church to file the suits and whatnot. So that was paid out of my pocket.
I think that says a testament to your character. I think it's important for people to realize when you have people who honestly want the best for our state, for our neighbors, for their family, for their friends, and what they give back. And thank you for doing that, because that was important. And that it's important because going back very quickly from the good to the evil, part of the evil was to close down our churches. And that was to add more of the division. I mean, like you said, that the governor wasn't a king. Well, our mayor certainly wasn't either, although she did send the SWAT team to a church.
Yes.
And had all of the cars towed because they want to have this division and to take out any kind of moral, godly path that is going to go against this evilness. So, that's awesome
that was a whole separate thing. They declared no parking zones around the Elam Romanian Pentecostal Church, and I happen to know Pastor Wanescu and had the opportunity. But they dragged them all the way to the United States Supreme Court, trying to declare that they were non-essential.
Right.
And again, they were served by a great organization called Liberty Counsel. Liberty Counsel did the work for the church for free in that circumstance, and those are the kinds of things. I'm currently also involved with the Illinois Conservative Union on election matters, contesting the authority of the election board to say that they cannot give data to folks. And again, now we're working with Judicial Watch on that. I did all the work, and I filed that suit and did the things for Illinois Conservative Union. I paid the legal fees I paid the filing fees for them too. And we're doing that, and that's for the good of the public, to defend those election matters, election integrity matters, and those are for the good of the public. And I think attorneys have an obligation. They've got a special place to be able to go into court and argue things, and so they should use those skills from time to time. Obviously, you got to make a living, but you actually owe something to that in the country. And I'll tell you what, it still comes from my grandma. It all comes back from grandma.
Well, that's good. It sounds like you had a very good role model with her.
I miss her. I still miss her to this day, and it's almost 30 years ago that we lost her.
So, how you mentioned that you have a duty to help prosecute. What's happening here in Chicago is people are just being let out.
Yes.
No bond, with electronic monitoring that isn't working. How can we go back to make those people accountable?
It's not terribly difficult. It's not terribly difficult. It's not terribly difficult to control the governor's overreach that's happened, and that is enforce the law. And we have the authority to do that. So that's something that people don't understand, again, about the Attorney General's office. They have authority over every case in which the people of the state of Illinois may have an interest, in which case every criminal case starts out with the people of the state of Illinois versus the defendant. So we have the authority to go in and prosecute these cases when the local prosecutors do not, and we will do so.
That's what we need. Gary, are you still there?
I'm still here, but I do have to leave.
Yes.
Quick.
Can you give us a quick minute and a half recap of why people should vote for you? What do you see for Illinois in the future?
Yeah, so for me, when you compare myself of the top 4 candidates, I'm the only one that's never voted in the Democratic primary. I'm the only one that's built and turned businesses around my whole life. We've got the biggest turnaround opportunity in the history of the country. My goal is to bring people back to Illinois at a pace by 2025 that is the most per capita in the country. I'm very confident my economic plan and cultural plan will do that. We've got to turn around our cultural issues in our state as well as economics. And when we do that, we'll have more people moving into Illinois than any other state in the country. When we do that, it'll be the biggest turnaround in the history of our country. So there's nobody else that understands how to surround themselves with the right wisdom to do that. There's nobody else with the turnaround experience that I have. So these are the reasons. I'm definitely the only one that's a statesman. When I say statesman, I want to do this job and then go back to business. I'll be working the rest of my life. I like to work hard. I like to be an entrepreneur and continue to create jobs and opportunity. There's nobody else in this race that's created thousands of jobs as I have in the state of Illinois that understands the pressures of small business in Illinois like I do. We've got the worst regulatory environment in the country, as I said before. I understand it inside and out, and I've been studying it nationally to understand what great states do compared to what our stupid state does. So we're going to get smarter. We're going to get more efficient. With myself as the governor, with other people, we've got politicians and Democrats in the Republican primary right now that I have to beat. If any of these people get elected, we're going to have the same old stuff, and our state's going to fall apart. So that's why to elect me, we like to say it's Rabine time.
Thank you very much. And very quickly, David, give me a minute why people should vote for you for Attorney General.
Because the prosecution aspects of this are so important of this office, and I am the only one with any kind of prosecution experience. I've done more than 400 felony matters, more than 10,000 misdemeanors, and the fact is neither of my opponents have ever done a single criminal case in their life. And I talk about Gary's situation and his ability to attract great talent. We will have a former lieutenant colonel of the Illinois State Police in charge of our investigations, a former career prosecutor that will be in charge of our criminal investigations. We need to attract top talent to execute these things, and I've got the experience within that environment to be able to connect with that top talent.
And you want to make crime illegal.
And we're going to make crime illegal again, absolutely.
Well, thank you everyone for joining us again for The People's Voice. It's a place where we can get our thoughts together, share our views, be honest, and protect our faith, family, and freedom, because that's what it's about. And don't forget to vote. And remember, I'm Christine Shanahan McGovern. I'm running for Illinois State Senate District 18. I want to be your voice because together we all, good candidates like Gary and David, we all can rise up for change. We all can make Illinois better. We can come together to make better policies to build our economy, to make sure our children are being educated a proper way in our public schools, or if the parents decide to use private schools, school choice. We all support school choice. The dollar should follow the children. Thank you again for joining us, and we will see you next time for The People's Voice.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Gary.
I see you guys.